teach us and guide us in Torah, the flesh, the Aleph and the Tav that became flesh in Yeshua, also shed his blood so that we might be restored and we might be redeemed. We might have salvation. So it can affect our very salvation to allow false doctrines into our life, because they will drive us away. They will drive us to the big old wide highway instead of staying on the narrow back road where we ought to be. So the idea we get is that a false doctrine or idea can and will find its way into the believer's belief system, and if it is left unchecked, a full, and then this is in parentheses, a full month, yomim, doesn't just mean a month in Hebrew, but this means a span of time, and yerach means a 30-day period by the lunar cycle, but if left unchecked during this period of time, will lead to the growth and deep rooting of a doctrine that can go contrary to and distorts the very word of Yahuwah our Elohim. There are an enormous amount of doctrines out there in both Judaism and Christianity. A lot of them are really off course. And they're off course because in Christianity, 1,800 years of straying off. Judaism, it could be thousands of years of everything they went into. Even in, we say, Messianic circles, they draw from Christian ideas and they draw from Talmudic ideas that they don't bother to draw from Torah and Brit Hadashah and look at the scripture and study the scripture and say, wow, this doctrine that we've believed all these years isn't going to work. So we have an individual responsibility to make sure that our walk is where it needs to be, and that our walk is in the straight and narrow that it needs to be. So anyway, it'll keep growing, go contrary, it distorts the very word of Yahuwah Elohim. So we see this in the phrase, and after that you may go in unto her and be her husband, and she shall be your wife. Restoration is a process that requires a realization of falsehood in one's life. We make teshuvah. We can't make teshuvah if we don't recognize that there's something wrong. So, in one's life as well as a realization and a conviction that one desires to and knows that one must remove it. So if I have falsehood in my life and I recognize the falsehood in my life, then I have the responsibility to recognize it and then to remove it. To make it your wife is simply to make it part of your belief system, affecting your walk and your relationship with your Elohim. Everybody catch that? We don't make teshuvah. We let this false idea stick around and say, honey, what's for dinner? And it roots itself in, and it will affect our walk and our relationship with our Elohim. So we come to verse 14. And it shall be, if you have no delight in her, then you shall let her go where she will. But you shall not sell her at all for money, and shall not deal with her as a slave, because you have humbled her. Now, we can break this down into stages that lead to redemption and restoration, basically a clean slate. Number one, and it shall be if you have no delight in her. You have fallen under conviction that the doctrine that you thought was good is really not good, and that it has brought you hardship in your relationship with Elohim. It's brought confusion. What do we say that it brought? Doubt. Number two, then you shall let her go where she will. The word lenefesha is used for where she will. Nefesh means life and soul. In the context of these verses, the idea that we get is that we are to let that lifestyle possessing our very soul to go. These false doctrines will root to our very soul. They'll root spiritually, and they're very difficult to remove. But this says that we are to let it go. We must step cleanly away and not, as we shall see, drag it with us any distance. We have to let it go and not drag it along with us. Number 3, but you shall not sell her at all for money. Letting go doesn't automatically bring redemption. The word for money is kesef, which means silver. This represents redemption. Acknowledging false ideas and turning away from them brings restoration, from which redemption comes. Okay? But we have to let it go. We have to make teshuvah, and then we don't have to we should not pick it up again. We can't pay the price for the redemption. The redemption price is already paid. But we have to worship in spirit and in truth. Number 4, let's see. You shall not deal with her as a slave. Don't try to in any way manipulate or twist this doctrine to try to make it work. The word loti te amer literally means do not manipulate. What do we see in the letters that might indicate what not to manipulate? First, we have the letter or the word lo, which is spelled with a lamed and an aleph. So we see that it means not to manipulate the instruction of Elohim. Okay? It means, lo means not. But in the letters we see the instruction of Elohim. So not to manipulate the very instruction that we get from Elohim. We can't or should not try to manipulate the Torah, Brit Hadashah, or any scripture to make it suit an idea. What else will we not try to manipulate? We must not try to manipulate our perception. There's the ayin of the authority. There's the resh of the word. There's the mem and the covenant. There's the tav. By trying to make this false idea work. We hold on to things that we shouldn't hold on to. And we try to work it in so it'll work, although it goes totally contrary to what our Elohim has taught in His Word, what Yeshua has said, what has been confirmed by the prophets and the apostles. So the final phrase of this verse is an indicator of what has been at stake. Because you have humbled her, we'll consider the word humbled her, which is anita, from the root ana, meaning to be occupied with. Humbled is kind of far down in the list of definitions. This word also means to be afflicted with and to mishandle. Another root of ana means to answer, to respond to testify about, to witness and announce. So if we don't simply let it go, if we try to manipulate it into our belief system because we have occupied our time with this belief, we have testified and been a witness concerning this belief, then it will continue to afflict us as we mishandle the word of truth, trying to make a falsehood part of it. It must be cut completely loose, along with any pride that keeps it there. We think to ourselves, what will other people or family think? And this is the main reason that people hold on to false doctrine. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. We can't handle ridicule, and it's the truth of the matter. The word of Yahuwah Eloheinu is truth. We must seek the truth in our relationship with Him. Both Torah and Yeshua in Brit Hadashah warn us about false prophets and false doctrines. We are told to be watchful, as these ideas are pleasant to the ear. They are the beautiful woman captive. but are contrary to the word of Elohim. We are also warned concerning them by the prophets, but also by John, Peter, Jacob, Judas, and Paul in their epistles to the assemblies. We must study to show ourselves approved, as a worker will not be ashamed, being able to rightly divide the word of truth. That's what Paul tells Timothy. So, we have to be careful. But we see how we'll turn off a set of scriptures and say that doesn't apply to us today, when it actually applies to us in every single way. Because following that set of scriptures is a set of scripture about the man that has two wives, one whom he loves and one who he hates. And if the one who he hates gives birth first, then he has to give the firstborn of the wife that he hates double the amount of an inheritance. So we build problems for ourselves by keeping things around that go contrary to the word. What kind of children are raised by these ideas? We go to the next step in this portion that talks about the rebellious son. How it gets to a point where you've taken him before the elders, he's still not changing, he's still a glutton and a wine bibber is what it says, and he's still causing you problems. The Torah says, take him outside the camp and let him be stoned. Okay? Stoned to death. Rashi says, because you take him outside the camp and you stone him to death now, before he's gotten to a point where he's out on the road robbing people and transgresses. But we apply that to our thing, that we can have an idea or a doctrine in our life that is going to take up our inheritance, and it's also going to lead us to a point of rebellion in our lives. Any questions on any of this stuff? I'll jump in all together.
Yeah.
All right then.
It's amazing.
We achieved grooviness.
Very good.